So what if I told you that buying the most expensive, highly rated, hyper-efficient air conditioning unit on the market might actually be the exact reason your house ends up covered in mold?
I mean, it sounds completely backward, doesn't it?
Right, because, you write that painful check and you're expecting absolute perfection.
Oh, yeah.
You're dreaming of this perfectly crisp, cool house, but then the new system kicks on and you still have that one boiling hot room at the end of the hall.
Which is incredibly frustrating.
It really is. Or you still have cold spots in the winter. And worst of all, your utility bills just haven't budged an inch.
Yeah, you're left standing there wondering if you just bought a very expensive metal box that, well, does nothing.
Exactly. And exploring that underlying disease, that frustration, is our mission for today's deep dive.
It's such a vital topic, too,
Yeah.
because homeowners are, they're treating the most obvious symptom, which is the old machine.
Right, the box outside.
Yeah, but the underlying disease of the house itself is just being completely ignored.
And to really dig into this, we are looking through a fascinating set of notes and transcripts from a guy named Dave Hartzell.
Dave is great. He's a 45-year master HVAC tech operating out of Kingfisher, Oklahoma.
45 years. I mean, he has seen it all.
Oh, absolutely.
And Dave is breaking down this specific industry standard. It's called ACCA 12QH.
Which stands for Existing Homes Energy and Comfort Improvement.
Right. So our goal today is to figure out why simply swapping out your equipment rarely solves your home comfort issues. We want to unpack the whole home approach that finally explains the actual mechanics of indoor comfort.
Because it really is a whole home issue.
Okay, let's unpack this. Why do standard HVAC fixes fail so spectacularly in older homes?
Well, before we can fix a broken house,
Yeah.
we kind of have to look at the fundamental flaw in how most people approach the problem.
Okay, what do you mean?
Most HVAC standards, like the rules that dictate how these mechanical systems are engineered and installed, they're heavily biased toward new construction.
Oh, I see. Like building a house from scratch.
Exactly. They are built around the concept of a clean slate. You design the blueprints, you calculate the exact heating and cooling load, you install the ductwork in wide-open framing.
Because there's no drywall in the way yet.
Right. And then you commission the unit. It is a highly controlled environment. But an existing home, say one built in 1965 or even 1985, is a radically different beast.
Because an older house is essentially a time capsule, right?
It's a good way to put it.
You're dealing with outdated insulation, old window performance standards, and let's be honest, probably 40 years of deferred maintenance.
Oh, and the DIY modifications.
Right. The weird structural compromises made by previous owners who thought they knew what they were doing.
Exactly.
It sounds like trying to drop a brand new, highly tuned Ferrari engine into a rusted out 1985 minivan and then wondering why it doesn't handle well on the corners.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
Because it highlights the absurdity of what we're actually doing.
Right.
I mean, a Ferrari engine needs a rigid chassis, aerodynamic bodywork, specialized tires to perform.
Yeah, otherwise it's just going to tear the minivan apart.
Exactly. If you put it in a minivan, the chassis will flex, the suspension will fail, and you'll probably just crash. In the HVAC world, you are layering highly precise, modern machinery on top of, well, decades of accumulated systemic issues in the home structure.
But wait, let me push back on that for a second.
Sure.
Shouldn't a powerful enough modern AC unit be able to cool any space, regardless of its age or, structural integrity? Like, if I buy the biggest, most aggressive unit on the market, shouldn't brute force just win?
Well, what's fascinating here is that physics simply doesn't care about brute force.
Physics always wins.
It really does. And that realization is the core philosophy of the ACCA 12 standard. This standard demands that we stop viewing the air conditioner as an independent magic box.
Right, it's not a magic box.
No. We have to start viewing the entire home as a complete interconnected energy system. You cannot just layer new equipment on top of old structural problems.
So if you put a massive, highly efficient heat pump into a house that is just hemorrhaging air through the walls and the roof,
that equipment will run constantly. It will never catch up.
Because if the machinery isn't the primary problem, physics dictates that the conditioned air must be escaping somewhere else.
Exactly.
And that forces us to look at the physical boundaries of the house to find out exactly where the system is failing.
Which brings us to the first of two massive initial assessments required by ACCA 12 before a contractor even touches your thermostat.
Okay, step one.
Step one is evaluating the building envelope.
The envelope.
Yeah, the envelope is essentially the physical barrier between the conditioned air inside and the unconditioned air outside.
So we're talking about walls, the ceilings, the attic floor, the slab, the windows.
Yes, and any tiny penetrations, like where pipes or wires go through the exterior.
Oh, right. Dave gives this incredible real-world example from his work in Oklahoma.
The 3-ton versus 4-ton example.
Yes. He says a mathematical load calculation might say a house only needs a 3-ton cooling system. But he'll walk into that same house and find a 4-ton unit running nonstop.
Just absolutely struggling to keep the living room cool.
Exactly. And the culprit is usually the envelope, specifically the attic insulation. He notes that over 20 years, fiberglass insulation settles.
It really does.
It might have started with an R30 rating, but it has compressed all the way down to an R15.
We should probably clarify those R values, actually, because
Ab-
they are crucial to understanding the envelope.
Oh, absolutely. Go ahead.
So the R stands for thermal resistance. It measures how well a material resists the transfer of heat.
So a higher R value is better.
Right. The higher the R value, the better the insulation. So an R30 rating provides a pretty robust barrier. But when Dave says it settles down to an R15, he's saying the insulation has literally flattened out over decades.
It just squishes down under its own weight.
Yeah, and it loses half of its stopping power. So the heat from the attic is just baking right through the ceiling drywall into your living space.
Wow. And on top of that, thermal heat radiating down, Dave mentions finding gaps around recessed light fixtures and attic hatches.
Those are huge culprits.
And he says that when you add all those little gaps up, it literally equals leaving a window wide open to the outdoors all year round.
Which is wild to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, you wouldn't turn on your air conditioning while leaving your living room window wide open in the middle of July.
Never.
But structurally, that is exactly what is happening in these older homes.
Okay, so that's the envelope. What's the second assessment?
The second major assessment the standard requires is the duct system. Dave notes that in many older homes, especially in places with extreme summer heat like Oklahoma, you often find degraded R4 flex duct.
And it's just sitting up there in a 150-degree attic for 30 years.
Exactly.
I want to pause on that because flex duct is one of those things most of us have seen but maybe don't fully understand.
Right.
These are those large, accordion-like plastic and wire tubes wrapped in a thin layer of fiberglass, right? They look almost like giant dryer vents.
That's them, exactly. And they are incredibly common because, well, they're cheap and they're easy to snake through tight attics and crawl spaces.
Makes sense for builders.
It does.
Hmm.
But the plastic outer liner gets extremely brittle when it bakes in an attic summer after summer.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah, animals chew on them, technicians accidentally crush them while crawling around up there, and the tape holding the joints together just dries out and fails completely.
So you have 30-year-old plastic tubes carrying 55-degree conditioned air through an attic that is hot enough to cook an egg.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Dave says the ACCA 12 standard requires ductwork in unconditioned spaces to have a minimum of R8 insulation, basically doubling that thermal resistance.
Which is a massive upgrade from R4.
But getting back to the whole window left open detail, if my house is just a giant sieve leaking air everywhere, why can't I just crank the thermostat down to 60 degrees to compensate? Like, just let the machine run nonstop.
Well, you certainly could, but you are going to pay a very steep price for it.
In energy bills, you mean?
Yes. If you just crank the thermostat, the equipment is forced to try and overcome a structural loss with sheer mechanical output. First, it completely destroys the energy efficiency of the home. It drives your utility bills through the roof.
Right.
And second, it drastically shortens the equipment's lifespan. An air conditioner is a mechanical device with moving parts. If it runs 20 hours a day instead of 10, the compressor will burn out years ahead of schedule.
So throwing more mechanical power at a structural leak is the ultimate definition of treating the symptom rather than the disease.
Exactly. It's just bad science and bad economics.
Okay, so if throwing brute force machinery at a leaky house doesn't work, the logical next step for most of us is grabbing a caulking gun, right?
The DIY ceiling phase.
Yeah. We get some weather stripping, some spray foam, and we just plug every hole we can find. But Dave points out that if we blindly seal everything up to stop the leaks, we actually run into a completely new, potentially dangerous problem.
We really do.
Yeah.
And it involves the actual air we breathe. This is where we shift from structural issues to human health. ACCA 12 also mandates mechanical and indoor air quality, or IAQ, assessments.
And on the mechanical side, Dave points out something that shocks a lot of homeowners.
What's that?
He says a well-maintained, correctly sized, older unit will often drastically outperform a brand new, oversized unit that is hooked up to leaky, undersized ductwork.
It's true. The ductwork is the lungs of the house.
But the indoor air quality part of his notes is what really caught my attention. Dave warns that homeowners have spent years systematically tightening their houses to save energy.
Oh, yes. The unintended consequences of energy efficiency.
Right. We buy thicker weather stripping for the doors, we spray foam around the window frames, and we roll out extra fiberglass in the attic.
Trying to seal that envelope tight.
Exactly. But we do all of this tightening without adding any form of mechanical ventilation.
And the result of trapping all that air. Elevated indoor humidity, massive spikes in CO2 levels from simply breathing, and eventually mold growth inside the walls.
Which sounds terrifying.
Well, this raises an important question, How do we balance energy efficiency with human health?
Right. How do you balance it?
A house is essentially a living ecosystem. The people inside are generating moisture through cooking, showering, and literally just existing and exhaling.
Yeah, breathing.
If you build a tight plastic bag around that ecosystem, the moisture has absolutely nowhere to go.
Wait, I have to stop you there because there's a massive contradiction I'm struggling with.
Okay, hit me.
In the last segment, we established that structural leaks are the ultimate enemy, right? They waste money and they destroy equipment.
True.
But now we're saying that sealing the house up suffocates it, traps humidity, and causes mold. How on earth do you win if both leaking and sealing are bad?
That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah.
And the answer is you win through intentional control.
Intentional control.
Yes. A house needs to breathe, that much is true, but it needs to breathe on purpose.
On purpose.
Yeah.
Not just through random cracks.
Exactly. It needs to breathe through controlled mechanical ventilation systems that filter and manage the incoming air. It should not be breathing by accident through random dirty gaps in your attic floorboards or around your plumbing pipes.
Ugh. Yeah, pulling attic air into the house sounds gross when you say it like that.
It is gross. When you seal a house blindly without calculating how much fresh air needs to be intentionally introduced, you trap moisture, allergens, and even combustion gases inside.
Wow, so if sealing the house changes how it breathes and repairing the ducts changes the air pressure, how do you fix a house without just triggering a chaotic chain reaction of new problems?
You follow the golden rule of ACCA 12.
The golden rule.
The exact order in which you execute the repairs is the key to the whole puzzle. The standard dictates a strict, non-negotiable sequence.
Okay, what is the sequence?
Step 1 is addressing the envelope. Step 2 is fixing the duct system. Step 3, and only Step 3, is replacing the mechanical equipment.
Okay, and here's where it gets really interesting. Because if you do it backward, you are setting yourself up for a very expensive disaster.
Oh, a catastrophic waste of money.
Let's say you buy the new equipment first because your old one died. The contractor calculates the size of that brand new unit based on how horribly leaky your house is right now.
Right, they measure the load of a broken house.
Exactly. Then, maybe a year later, you decide to finally fix the envelope by air sealing the attic and installing energy-efficient windows. Suddenly, that $15,000 unit you just bought is completely oversized for your newly tightened house.
And an oversized unit is a total comfort nightmare.
Why is that? Doesn't it just cool faster?
It cools the air inside the space way too fast. It hits your target thermostat temperature and shuts off in maybe 10 minutes. That's called short cycling.
Short cycling.
Yeah, but an air conditioner's second job, and honestly, in a humid climate, arguably its most important job, is removing moisture from the air.
Dehumidification.
Exactly. That dehumidification process takes time. If the unit only runs for 10 minutes before shutting off, it leaves all the humidity behind.
Oh. So you end up with a cold, clammy house that feels like a damp cave.
Precisely. It's cold, but you still feel sticky.
I love analogies, so think of it this way. Doing the equipment before the envelope is like buying an incredibly expensive, custom-tailored suit while you're still in the middle of a massive weight loss program.
Oh, that's perfect.
It's just not going to fit when you're done.
That is a brilliant way to frame it. The suit is tailored for the body you have today, not the body you'll have in 6 months. If you shrink the body, or in our case, shrink the heating and cooling load of the house by adding insulation, the suit will be comically large.
You are commissioning new equipment to a broken distribution system.
Yes. And Dave notes that as an ethical contractor, he will explicitly tell customers if fixing their ducts or their attic insulation is the real answer, instead of just taking their money for a useless replacement unit.
Think about it. How many people do you know who just jump straight to buying the expensive new AC when their house gets hot?
Almost everyone.
Almost everyone does it because the big metal box in the yard is the most visible piece of the puzzle. But the immense value of this perspective is that it protects you from being upsold.
Absolutely.
By following the ACCA 12 sequence correctly, the contractor recalculates the home's exact heating and cooling load at each and every step. It proves that having the right knowledge literally saves your wallet.
It forces the industry to use science rather than guesswork.
But that brings up a really practical question.
Okay.
Sequencing sounds incredibly logical in theory. Envelope, ducts, equipment. But how does a contractor actually measure a house's invisible leaks to know what step to take next?
They have to use specialized diagnostic tools.
Right. I read Dave's notes on these tools, and I feel like I'm fairly well-versed in home improvement, but these tools sound wild. I want to try to break down the first one he mentions, the blower door test.
Please do. It's honestly one of the most vital tools in building science.
Okay, so based on the notes, the contractor basically takes down your front door, or rather, opens it, and mounts this temporary frame filled with a heavy-duty fabric and a massive calibrated fan.
Yep. It looks like a giant red tent over your doorway.
Yeah. And they turn the fan on, and it blows air out of the house, which depressurizes the entire building. It's basically sucking the air out to see how fast outside air rushes back in through all the hidden cracks and leaks.
You've got the mechanics perfectly, and what they're measuring is a metric called air changes per hour, specifically ACH 50.
Okay, break down ACH 50 for me.
So the 50 stands for 50 pascals of pressure.
Pascals?
Right. The fan is essentially simulating the pressure of a 20-mile-per-hour wind blowing against every single side of your house at the exact same time.
Wow.
It gives the contractor a hard, quantifiable number representing exactly how much air is leaking. Dave notes that a typical older home in Oklahoma might score an 8 to 12.
Which means the air in the house completely swaps out 8 to 12 times an hour.
Exactly. A well-sealed modern home is around a 3 to 5. And a hyper-efficient passive house is under 0.6.
Under 0.6, that's airtight.
It is. And most homeowners are completely stunned when they see the hard data on how poorly their house performs during this test.
And that test is paired with something called a duct blaster test. Dave specifies that this test measures something called CFM25. Can you break that one down?
Sure. A duct blaster is a very similar concept to the blower door, but applied directly to the ductwork.
Okay.
They seal off all the return and supply registers in your rooms, usually with tape or specialized covers, and they attach a smaller fan to the system and pressurize the ducts to 25 pascals.
And CFM25?
CFM25 stands for cubic feet per minute of air lost at that 25 pascals of pressure. It tells the contractor exactly how much conditioned air is actively escaping through holes, loose tape, and bad joints in your ducts.
Just blowing straight into your unconditioned attic or crawl space.
Right. You are literally paying to air condition your attic.
That is painful to think about.
It really is.
Then there is thermal imaging. They use an infrared camera alongside the blower door test.
This is the fun part.
Because the fan is pulling outside air into the house, right? And that air is a different temperature. So the contractor can walk around your living room with the thermal camera and literally see the invisible cold air leaking through the drywall or creeping under the baseboards.
It's like having X-ray vision. It visualizes the invisible.
It removes all the guesswork.
Completely.
But the most intense part of the diagnostic toolkit, and the one I want to make absolutely sure we clearly understand, is combustion analysis.
Yes, this is crucial.
Dave says this is a critical safety check because tightening a home can starve gas appliances like your furnace or water heater of makeup air. And the notes say this can cause dangerous gases to backdraft. How exactly does that mechanism work?
Well, this is a matter of life and safety. Let's say you have an older gas water heater in a utility closet.
Okay.
When it burns gas to heat your water, the toxic exhaust, which includes carbon monoxide, naturally vents up a metal flue pipe and out through the roof.
Because hot air rises.
Exactly. Now imagine you've tightly sealed all the windows and doors to save energy.
We fixed the envelope.
Right. If you then turn on a heavy-duty kitchen exhaust fan to cook dinner, that fan pushes a massive amount of indoor air outside.
Oh, I see where this is going.
That missing air has to be replaced. That replacement air is called makeup air.
So nature abhors a vacuum. The house has to pull air from somewhere to replace what the kitchen fan pushed out.
Right. And if the house has no natural leaks around the windows to pull that makeup air from, it creates a severe negative pressure environment inside the house.
It acts like a giant vacuum.
Yes. And the path of least resistance for incoming air ends up being straight down the exhaust pipe of your gas water heater.
Down the exhaust pipe.
Yeah. So instead of the dangerous carbon monoxide venting out through the roof safely, the negative pressure of the house actually sucks that deadly exhaust backward, right down the pipe and straight into your living room.
That is genuinely terrifying.
It happens more often than people think when homes are sealed improperly.
So what does this all mean? If a contractor shows up to my house to give me a quote for a brand new system, and they don't have a blower door, a duct blaster, or a thermal camera in their truck, they are just guessing, aren't they?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, yes. Without these tools, contractors are operating totally blind.
Wow.
And if we look back at Dave's specific context, the millions of homes built between the 1960s and the 1990s, these buildings are essentially black boxes of unknown problems.
They really are.
They have missing house wraps, failing single-pane windows, and ductwork that is just falling apart. But if a professional brings modern diagnostic tools to accurately measure the flaws and pairs that data with modern building materials, they can completely transform these aging homes into highly efficient, comfortable, and safe spaces.
So we started today talking about why the magic box theory of buying a new HVAC always fails. And we've seen that it's because homes are full of invisible, unmeasured leaks. We've learned the absolute necessity of the sequencing rule, envelope first, duct second, equipment last, to prevent that terrible short cycling.
Crucial order of operations.
And we've dug into the incredibly scientific diagnostic tools used to actually prove what the house needs, rather than just guessing.
It really changes how you look at a house.
It does. Also, as a quick tease, Dave mentions his next topic in the source material will be ACCA 6QR.
Oh, that's a good one.
That standard proves that actual duct renovation is vastly different from those $99 duct cleaning marketing flyers we all get in our mailboxes.
Completely different. Night and day.
I think that sounds like another great deep dive for the future.
I agree completely. I think the major takeaway from Dave's insight today is a fundamental shift in how we perceive the structures we live in.
Right. So the next time you feel a cold draft in your hallway or you open an absurdly high energy bill, you now know that it is a systemic issue.
It really is.
It is not just a mechanical failing of your air conditioner. The house is a system.
And, as we consider the house as a complex breathing system, I'd like to leave you with a final thought to ponder.
Oh, let's hear it.
We discussed how tightening a home to prevent leaks creates negative pressure, which can trap CO2 and cause gas appliances to backdraft carbon monoxide into your living space.
Yes, the vacuum effect.
Right. So if tightening our homes for the sake of ultimate energy efficiency creates these massive, potentially lethal risks, at what point does the aggressive, industry-wide push for green home improvements actually become a public health hazard if our mechanical ventilation standards don't evolve at the exact same pace?
Wow. That perfectly brings us back to where we started. You might finally get that perfectly crisp, cool house with the new AC, but are you actually safe breathing the air inside it?
Exactly.
Something to think about the next time you reach for the weather stripping.